COVID-19 is disrupting the world. Millions unemployed, businesses barely surviving, many failing. Trillions of dollars created in a desperate attempt to prevent collapse. What's next? How will it end? How can Main Street investors avoid disaster, capitalize on opportunity, and make a positive difference? Robert Helms and Russell Gray talk with a powerful panel of economists, investors, and insiders to find out.
Well, hello and welcome to the COVID-19 Crisis Investing webinar series. I'm Robert Helms, host of the Real Estate Guys, and with me, our financial strategist and co-host for all these years, Russell Gray.
Hi, Robert.
Good to see you, and good to see everybody here today. You know, we started assembling an idea of putting together this webinar, and it's grown beyond our imagination. As you'll see, we have tremendous guests, big brain folks who are going to share lots of different insights, and it's going to be hard to digest in one sitting. You know, we said it was going to be a webinar, and what it's turned into is a webinar series. So what that means is how you watch the series depends on you, but there's going to be a ton of stuff. Now, we're not going to assume that you already listened to our podcast. A lot of folks have been listening to us on the radio for 23 years, talking about real estate. But to give you a little introduction, that's kind of who we are, the Real Estate Guys. And we aren't gurus. We don't have any, particular expertise. Instead, we have a series of experiences that put us in a little different camp, I think, than a lot of real estate investors and real estate investing shows. We look globally. We look at real estate as more than just flipping a house. And for all these years, every single week, we put out a weekly radio program, now in its 23rd year of broadcast. At some point, we began podcasting, kind of the pioneers in the real estate podcasting space. And today, our podcast is heard in more than 190 countries, and we have millions and millions of downloads. So if you've never heard the show, we'd invite you to do that. But I think a big part of understanding who we are is, and why we would have the ability to bring this information to you, is part of the story.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's almost as though our story together has two phases. It has pre-2008 and post-2008. And I think anybody watching this probably remembers 2008 was our last great financial crisis. And going into that, we were very hardcore, the real estate guys, nose to the grindstone, paying attention to what we were doing and really ignoring what was going on at the macro level. You know, we noticed a long time ago that mainstream financial media just doesn't talk to real estate investors, really to Main Street investors. They talk to Main Street to get Main Street to send their money to Wall Street, and then Wall Street does what it does. Well, that's all fine for people who want to play in those casinos, and that's great, and we're not putting that down until it rolls back downhill onto Main Street. And that's what happened in 2008. Some shenanigans that were going on in the derivatives markets blew up the subprime mortgage market and, got kind of blamed on Main Street like it flowed up to Wall Street, but that's not really how it happened. And it had its roots in credit markets. And so we sat there at the back end of that and said, oh my gosh, boy, knowing what we know now, who should we have been listening to? What should we have known and been watching? And what could we have done to protect ourselves? And so that put us on a new mission over the last 12 years to build those relationships, to gain those understandings, to look at the bigger picture and help prepare ourselves and now other people for the potential of the next financial crisis. And here we are.
And the great thing about real estate is that you can invest in real estate in myriad ways, so many different ways. In fact, we don't have a position on that other than our personal investment philosophy. So we don't just cover residential real estate or commercial real estate or development or agriculture or any of that. We cover the whole idea of investing your assets into something real, something tangible, real asset investing. And we think real estate fits that bill pretty well. But we also think that before you can be a real estate investor, you really do need to have some chops when it comes to just understanding markets and investment in general, right? All investors, whether they're investing in equities or private companies or their own business or real estate, have to have some basic fundamental understanding of the sea that their investment floats in. And so a lot of this crisis webinar is not going to be real estate specific. Before we even get to which markets and which product types do we personally want to invest in, we got to see the big picture. So this is very much a big picture webinar series.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to everybody knows that something is changing. I mean, it's not just a little change. This is a major, substantial uh, change to the way the world operates, to the way you earn money, the way business is done, certainly the way investments are done and investment infrastructure, unprecedented things in terms of spending and printing of money and interest rates and all kinds of things are going on that we've never seen before. And so I think everybody knows that adjustments need to be made. If you just keep doing things the way you always did in the old normal, the new normal may hand you a result that you don't want. And, kind of that's what we learned from 2008. The quicker that you can get the lay of the land and put into place strategies to mitigate the risks that are coming, which means you've got to see them and understand them, and then also to capture the opportunities that are likely to develop either in or on the other end of whatever we go through. And so it isn't doom and gloom by any stretch of the imagination because there's lots of opportunity. But before you can make a plan to avoid risk or capture opportunity, you've got to get the lay of the land. And the way you do that is by having a bunch of safari guides who are looking at the lay of the land from different angles, who can give you different perspectives and insights. Maybe you're a little bit higher up the flagpole, if you will, it can see further down the horizon, maybe who are more experienced in certain areas. And so that's really what we're doing. We've assembled a group of people that we have great, close personal relationships with that will take our phone calls and answer our questions. And rather than just talk to them privately for our own benefit, we said, well, let's turn the mics on and let's get these people to share what they know and respond to our questions and share what they know with our audience. And we decided rather than just make it exclusive to the real estate guys audience, we'd put it up on YouTube and we'd make it a lot bigger than it's been. And so we're excited to have you here. We've got a lot to talk about, but it's going to be powerful.
So that's kind of what the series is designed to do, is to give you more of a 360 on the economy. And really part of our theme is this idea of flattening the economic curve. A lot of talk in the media in the last, weeks and months about flattening the health curve, the virus curve, the pandemic. And everyone understands that if we can at least slow the rate at which it travels, then the consequences may not be as bad. That's still in the future to find out if that's true. But when it comes to the crisis, we're talking about a crisis investing webinar. COVID-19 is more than just a health crisis. So Russ, take us through what we think are the 4 phases of this.
Yeah, I call this the 4 phases of a cascading crisis. And, you always are trying to anticipate what's next, or what phase are you in? What stage are you in? It obviously started as a health crisis. And so our friends, Chris Martenson and Adam Taggart, gave us a heads up back in January and said, I don't know if you guys are watching this, but this coronavirus crisis that's coming, this is going to be big. It's going to be the biggest thing that we've ever seen. It's going to have a profound effect. Well, we hang around with a lot of people and sometimes they're a little bit alarmist. And I have to admit, when they first called me, I kind of took it with a grain of salt, but it didn't take too long to find out they knew what they were talking about. And what made it impactful was phase 2. And phase 2 is the economic lockdown. So a health crisis becomes an economic crisis when you shut down economic activity. It's like having an economic heart attack. All of a sudden, currency, blood, if you will, stops flowing, and individual cells, people, and organizations, organs, right? They stop getting fed life nourishing nutrients. That's what money does. It keeps everybody going, and that all locked down. And so the problem is that becomes an economic crisis, and the economic numbers are telling you that's. You can't look at the stock market because the stock market can be artificially manipulated. But if you look at GDP growth, if you look at the number of people not working, that tells you we're in an unprecedented epic economic crisis. Well, when people can't make their payments, it moves on to the 3rd phase, which is a financial crisis. This is where credit markets collapse. This is where banking systems collapse. And our entire financial system is predicated on debt. We're going to get into that in greater detail, but for now, just understand that's the way it is. And when those debt payments can't be made and you've lowered interest rates all the way down to 0, even when people have no income, they can't make payments. And so then that's what happened in 2008 when a few subprime mortgage borrowers couldn't make their payments. It began to implode the credit markets, which set off a chain reaction of defaults and something called counterparty risk. And that's one of the big risks going on right now. So the fourth phase is how the Fed and the central banks who print the currency or create the currency are reacting to the potential of a financial system crisis, and that is by printing unprecedented amounts of money, which could lead to a currency crisis. And so you may have been familiar with that, you may not have been familiar with that, so it really begs the question, okay, is that really the way this thing is going to play out? Number two is, will they be able to stop it before the end game? And number three, are you prepared for each phase, and if it goes all the way full cycle? That's what we're looking at. That's what we're working to prepare for. That's why we're doing this series.
And it's why we're bringing so many other voices into the mix. So folks that listen to our weekly radio show or podcast know that we have great guests and we talk about very specific real estate topics, but we also talk broader picture economics. Virtually everybody you're going to hear from in this series has been at one time or another on the show or part of what we do in the real estate guys world. And we're always interested in other perspectives. So let's talk about, now that you kind of know who we are and what the series is about, let's talk about why we're doing it, because I think you need to understand agenda right off the top. Our radio show is broadcast for free on the stations that play it. Our podcast is available at all your favorite podcast locales for free. Nobody pays for that content. As people say, what are you just guys benevolent and you just like to share ideas? Well, there is certainly a great degree of that. We are teachers and educators. We love helping people discover parts of investing they haven't seen and have the lights come on for people. But at the same time, we're businessmen and we run an enterprise, and we have folks that we consider our providers in our world that help point people to different outcomes in real estate. So we just want to be really clear on our agenda. Rather than take our best and highest relationships and package up an enormous and amazing piece of content for sale, we made the strategic decision to make it free, so there is no economic barrier. Now, I have to warn you, I don't want that to be a negative. Sometimes stuff that's free isn't perceived as having any value. And the reason that we decided not to charge for this, although we could, and although, frankly, we do several events a year that are very amazing and very expensive. So we have an economic model around education, but we really felt this needed to be in the hands of anybody who wanted to hear it.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the reason for that is in our enlightened self-interest. If you think about why real estate investors, for example, don't invest in poverty-stricken nations. And the reason you don't make those investments is because there's nobody to trade with. There's no prosperity. There's nobody to do business with. If the majority of people go through this financial crisis and are wiped out, then it makes investing, it makes doing business, it makes building wealth, it makes going out there and conducting commerce extremely difficult. This crisis has the potential to catch the people who are unaware and unprepared very flat-footed. And it could create widespread financial poverty and distress. Now, I'm not saying that to scare people, but that's just the fact of the matter. And you can tell by the reaction of the authorities, they're taking it extremely seriously. But for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, they say. And I think that there's going to be some consequences of all this spending and all this money printing and all these dislocations of the way people are doing business. It's also going to create some opportunity. So we think it's really important, as Robert mentioned earlier, this concept of flattening the economic curve. If we are all out there trying to prevent people from catching COVID-19 so that too many sick people don't overwhelm the health system, well, we're economic guys, we're financial guys. And so we took the same approach and said, well, we need to try to prevent as many people as possible from catching poverty from the COVID-19 crisis and overwhelming the financial system. If we can take pressure off the financial system and help people preserve and protect capital and then put it to work where it can do the most good, then we can actually help Main Street and maintain a system that we like to operate in and have lots of people out there prospering and have the ability to continue to do business in a healthy way. A healthy society is really just a collection of healthy individuals. And so every single person that we can share this information with, who can share it with other people, who can take corrective action, be aware, be prepared, and come out of this not wiped out, but hopefully prospering, then we're going to help make the world that we invest and operate in better too. And so that's really our motivation. And we would encourage you to take that same motivation and share this with as many people as you possibly can. Get them to watch it with you, get them to talk with you about it, because that's how you sharpen your understanding. We've learned a lot over the years talking to smart people. We're going to share a lot of those relationships with you as we go through this series.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Russ, because you could just sit in front of your computer and watch the whole thing and you'll learn something. But a much better way is for you to get in conversation about it, because that's what we're doing. Russ and I have ideas about most of the things we're going to talk about, but we'd rather hear from experts and authorities. We'll talk about who some of those folks are in just a minute, but you should do the same. If you have people in your world that are interested in this, and again, it's not doom and gloom. We are optimistic guys at the end of the day, and there's kind of two phases of the whole thing. It's like, what do I do right now? Hunkering down, sheltering in place. And then when we come out of this thing, where's the opportunity going to be? That's always our focus. But we have to understand where we are before we can know where we need to go. So a great way to learn and to get the most out of this is to banter around these ideas, to debate. Our biggest educational event of the year is our Investor Summit. And coming up, it'll be our 19th year of doing this. And we get together for more than a week with many of the folks who you'll hear from over the webinar series and a bunch of listeners. And we have an amazing time. And the big takeaways don't come from what you heard someone say on stage, but from the conversations over dinner and at the parties and things where you're really getting that information. And we create this little cocoon for 9 days, and it's extraordinary. Now, that's as close to a commercial or a pitch that you're going to get during the webinar. So we also don't have anything for sale. There's not a big upsell coming. If you consume some financial information, there are reputable companies out there, and there's other companies out there that do the big pitch. They get you all hot and bothered, and they say, now the answer is just $19.95 a month or $2,500 or whatever the answer is. There is none of that here. We're not pitching a big upsell. So if you're waiting for that shoe to drop, you're going to be disappointed. Obviously, we're going to invite some of the folks to share what they're doing and what resources they have, but you're going to find that the people that are here contributing to this series are here because they feel the way we do. They know that people can be better served if they have an understanding of these things. And the other way to get a lot out of this, and the reason you want to banner it back and forth, comes to something that Robert Kiyosaki taught us, and that's the cone of learning.
Yeah, the cone of learning is great. And really, it's just a study about what is effective in education. And the least effective thing is just sitting and listening to somebody lecture. But you have to do that because it stimulates the ideas. But the more you can get engaged, so if you can talk, if you can do a demonstration, if you can actually go out in the real world and do the real thing, that's where you learn. I mean, think about riding a bike, right? You can sit there and read a manual or listen to a lecture on how to ride a bike. You can watch a video on how to ride a bike. You can simulate riding a bike in a controlled environment. You can go out in the street and ride a bike and get your knees scuffed up, right? So the best way to learn is to learn by doing, but it's always good to preface that with a little bit of training. And so that's where we're at. We're going to provide some great ideas, some great information, some great perspectives through all these brilliant people. We're going to be talking about interest rates and bond markets, and we're going to be talking about energy and precious metals and currency. And of course, we're going to be talking about real estate. We're going to talk about where the bodies are buried and where the mines are hidden and where the opportunities are in everybody's different opinion. But at the end of the day, for you to absorb everything, you're probably going to have to watch some things more than once. You may have to do a little side homework, look up some terms or study some concepts, and we'll be working on some things to help you with that. But there's a lot of stuff out there. And then the main thing is talk with other people who are similarly interested and learn together. It's like a little study group, or what we call mastermind groups. These people that you're going to be meeting and we're going to be sharing with you are really, many of them are part of our mastermind group. We call them when we're stumped, when we don't know what to think, or when we need additional insight or guidance, and vice versa. We're happy to be a part of that for them. And so if you don't have that, take this as an opportunity to do it. Find some people that you think would be interested, watch it with them, talk about it with them, and try to convert what you learn into actionable intelligence. You're going to get some ideas, but we're not giving anybody financial advice. We're not tax experts. We're not financial advisors. We're not here to pitch anything. We're here to stimulate your thinking, to inspire you to study, and to take effective action, to really prepare, because learning isn't enough. This is an all hands on deck situation if you haven't figured that out already. And we thought we could bang this out in a day or two, and it turned out to be a lot bigger than that. And I'm not sure that even after we get done with this initial round that we're done. We'll see. But the point is that you can't be done, even if we're done, right? This is a launch pad for you to begin a lifelong love affair with financial education and understanding how to take care of your money. Because I think what we're learning through all of this is the institutions and the people, the leaders, quote unquote, maybe better named managers of the financial system, infrastructure, and opportunities that many people have really depended on their entire life. They're not proving to be trustworthy. They're not proving to be worthy of your faith, and they may not be there for you at the end, especially if you're a younger person. So now is the time to take charge of your financial education, build strategic relationships, and be diligent about taking effective action to build a bright future for yourself in spite of what's going on.
We have incredible guests over this webinar series. So who are they? Well, thought leaders for sure. Many of them not heard on mainstream media, and that's probably a good thing. They have their own opinions. You're going to hear some differing opinions. We're going to hear from economists. We're going to hear from best-selling authors. We're going to hear from insiders in business and the Fed. We're going to hear from people that have earned the right to have an opinion. And again, they don't always agree. And that's part of the other side, is you've got to open your mind to other opinions. We hope this isn't an echo chamber for anybody where you're just hearing, reconfirm, the thoughts that you already have. Instead, open your mind to some new ideas. We're also going to cover some specific niches that are hard asset niches and not necessarily real estate. You might be surprised that we're going to have less real estate specific context as the real estate guys, and certainly less speakers in terms of just real estate practitioners than we do even on our radio show. And that's because the whole purpose of this COVID-19 crisis webinar series is to get our mind around these bigger pictures and flattening the economic curve and how that may bleed over to the financial market and, of course, ultimately our currencies. So there's a lot to get your mind around. And for that reason, we put it into a more digestible format where the individual components, the series in the webinar, are going to be 20 to 40 minutes, something like that. And we're going to get an in-depth kind of interview with our guests. And then we've got a panel discussion. And the panel discussion is we're going to go through this entire amazing faculty of folks and ask them some specific questions. And that's kind of the what do we do next part. So the first part of this is getting your mind around what the problem is, how do we approach it, what changes may be coming or not, how should we be thinking about the future, and where might there be opportunity. And then our panel at the end is going to be amazing because we're going to ask these big brains, hey, given all of this, what do you think? What are some strategies? What are the problems we ought to be really focused on moving forward? So it should be educational and entertaining, but it also should be education for effective action. That's been our motto for the real estate guys all these years. Not education so that you're, informed, but education so that you can do something with it.
We're going to take a look and we're going to follow what Jim Collins wrote about in his great book, Good to Great. And he said that successful companies, the great companies, confront the brutal facts with optimism that they can find a solution. And that's the way we're going to approach this. We are faced with a stark reality. I think everybody out there knows that. Hiding from it will not make it go away. So we need to deal with it, but we can deal with it with optimism, with the belief that there will be opportunity and that together we will figure out a way to navigate this. So that's what we're going to do. We're happy that you're here. We encourage you to take the next step and watch the next episode and continue all the way through. And as we said, recruit friends to watch it with you and reinforce your education through those mastermind conversations, and then create action plans and get out there and do what you need to do.
Our next episode and our first guests are Chris Martenson and Adam Taggart from peakprosperity.com. We've known these folks for many years, and they've got an incredible story. They cover the 3 E's. That's really what their business is about. And the 3 E's are the economy, and that's important to everybody, and also energy. And by the time we're done with this series, you're going to probably look at energy differently than you do now. And of course, the environment, critical to all of us. So fasten your seatbelts and get ready for the COVID-19 Crisis Investing webinar. Next up, Chris Martenson and Adam Taggart.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Before you go, three things. Number one, click the subscribe button, because when we have more subscribers, it makes it easier for us to attract better guests to share great content with you. Number two is click the notification bell to be sure that you're notified when we put up new content. This is obviously an ongoing situation. We're going to have continuous discussions about it. You're going to want to make sure that you're kept up to date. And then number three is make sure you share it. Tell a friend. Help us flatten the economic curve by getting more financial education out there to people who need it. Okay, so you know what to do. Click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and we'll see you in the next video.
Systems break, and suddenly your family, friends, and neighbors are distracted with Wall Street stock indexes and Washington political pandering. Many are unaware and unprepared. Like COVID-19, ignorance of looming financial perils is also a disease, and the system is fragile. But you can help. Financial education is the vaccine. Share this free video series while there's still time. Alert people to these serious issues. If things turn quickly, the financial support system could be overwhelmed to the point of collapse. Help flatten the curve and reduce the impact on the financial system. Wake up more people to prepare. You have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. Share this video directly or invite people to visit crisisinvestingseries.com.